Hello, everyone. We're going to review Jesus' lesson on throwing pearls before swine. This is one of those statements where Jesus is recommending that you do not continue dialoguing with, well, you do not continue trying to communicate with people who are no longer dialoguing. It's a monologue. They just want to be heard, and there's no exchange of ideas or uh, thoughtfulness one to another. No response of love in a mutual way in any kind of the communication. It's all hostile one way and they don't listen. And so he gives you the advice. No, not advice, a command. All right, so this is Jesus' lesson. It's a very succinct one, and we'll see there's a parallel passage in Matthew 10, I believe it is. And Jesus, Yeshua, taught us, do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Very, very interesting command. It's a command of Jesus Christ. So everyone says, oh, you have to evangelize. You got to reach out to people, and, even if they're hateful and abusive and won't listen to you, just keep trying. What does Jesus say to that? No way, Jose. Pearls are symbolic of something sacred. We learn this from Jesus' parallel that you should not give to dogs what is sacred. Swine were unclean animals to eat. Dogs were generally regarded as unclean by the people. In the Bible, they are mentioned as used for hunting. Isaiah 56:11, Job 30, verse 1. So Jesus is alluding not to a biblical position about dogs. I say this as a dog lover. Jesus is alluding, just so that we don't get the wrong idea. Jesus is alluding to the common view of the people that dogs were unclean to touch. Obviously, the people learned they carried diseases. So dogs in even the Middle East today who live in range, free range, on garbage heaps and all that, they're not clean, physically clean, and they spread diseases. And they also have the capacity to become ravenous, and so they can turn on you. One moment you're feeding the dog, and the next moment they're biting you and getting you sick through a ravenous bite. They have distemper often, and they can tear a human to pieces. So this is the image he's trying to provide us. So if you notice, it's not, I know I call it pearls before swine, but there's two parts of it. It's clearly the dogs, and it's clearly the pigs. And now pigs could trample you. That would be, they rush you and they can maul you in their excitement to eat food. Okay. But it's the dogs who I think Jesus is referring to are the ones who will tear you to pieces. I don't think a pig is going to tear you to pieces, but they could trample you. So there's dogs that will tear you to pieces, and there are pigs who will trample you under their feet. And the problem is you are giving them what is sacred. And what does Jesus mean? What's a piggish person and what's a dog-like person in this scenario? So I've told you what the dogs really are an example of people who are engaged in things that will contaminate you. The way they behave, their evil, their venom, their bad language, whatever, you're going to get tempted to respond in kind. And when you see that happening in your mind, that's when you cut it off. Just say, no, I won't listen to this person because they're not exactly what Jesus is telling me. I can recognize them. This is a dog. They're not listening to me. This is a pig. They're a person who just is looking out for themselves, just trying to eat and not trying to give any food. Okay, so you got to look at it. This is a one-way communication between someone who's not wanting to dialogue like a human being, like intelligent people. And that's the other thing. These people are really, if you're a human being and you believe God is spoken to you, then you should be as kind as you can to another person in order to exchange your ideas so that person can hear you. If you are being insolent, rude, abusive, and even when people say I'm praying for you, can be abusive and mean-spirited and not in a good way. And so, sometimes I say, well, I'm praying for you too. And I think to myself, am I really praying for that person, or I just am being as snidey and under, dishonest as they are. And so it reminds me I have to just keep my cool and just say goodbye. You've crossed the line. You're no longer communicating, and so on. So on my channel, for example, I have people who will comment on videos they never watch, and they don't make any comments. And then they put in long speeches in their comments that have nothing to do with anything that's in the video. It's obvious they're spammers. And spamming is that you can have human spamming, people who just come up to you. Have you ever noticed this? There are people who will begin a conversation talking to you, and you haven't even said anything after 20 minutes, and they don't realize you've got to get going someplace, and they're rude as rude can be, and they just want to take up your time that you listen to them, as if this is the time and place to spend 20 minutes on some unrelated topic to what I was talking to you about and asking your help on, and or I did, I say 2 words to you about something, and then you're changing the topic to something else. So this is a daily thing that we can have happen in our lives, and we have to basically control it so we don't end up in the wrong place. So what are the holy type things of God that Jesus means by pearls? Well, he means the message of God. So he's literally telling you, in certain situations, you stop evangelizing. You stop giving God's message to somebody. So there is sometimes that giving God's message to someone is countermanded by Christ's command. How about that? You'd think not. You think, no matter what, you have to keep talking. Nope. It's more important for obeying Jesus that you do not do that in all cases. Jesus said that if someone calls another person raka, an empty head, a term intended to antagonize that person who said that to you is in danger of hell. And that's Matthew 5, verse 22. Okay, and why are they in danger of hell? It could be because they're inciting you to hate them, because they're trying to cause you to fall and sin and not just dislike them or not enjoy their company, but literally to become hateful towards them. And if they can grab you and pull you into their evil world of hatred, then you have become no better than them, and you're just worse than them because you let them do it to you. They started hateful, and then they brought you down into their pit of hell. And you've got to stop it before it gets that far. So many times I've had to just tell people, I'm no longer going to deal with you. I no longer will communicate with you. I'm cutting you off. Sorry, I have a command of God that tells me I'm not supposed to talk to you anymore. Okay? I even refer to this message of Jesus. Okay? So use it, because that's what Jesus gave it for, is those people who claim to be followers of Christ will at least acknowledge that you're not just simply blowing them off. You are obeying the master. Now, let's say you give someone God's message and they won't listen and begin to insult you as a dumbass, excuse my French, or other inflammatory words intended to signify you are stupid. Okay, so what did Jesus say elsewhere about such a person? Referring to a brother whose home you stayed in when you entered into a town and initially found someone worthy to stay with. This is an example. So this very message that I'm telling you about the pearls and the dogs, Jesus gives instructions in the same context about someone you stayed with, became co-workers for Christ even maybe. You were in their home, you thought they were worthy, but now they refuse to listen to you. It's a monologue. All they have to do is tell you stuff, and they no longer want to listen to anything you have to say. It's not a friendship. There's no collegiality. You have to accept what they're telling you. They're dogmatic. They're you're wrong, they're right. This is not of Christ. Just right away, they're trying to make you hate them, or they're trying to repress your love of God and change you from a believer in Christ into something else, which is wrong, totally. If you're following Christ, they cannot try to change you to follow Paul. So somebody comes at you with Paulinism and they said this is the way of God, they are not trying to get you to follow Christ. They're trying to get you to follow Paul. So what does Jesus say? When they will not listen to your words, which are coming from Christ, because that's who you follow. They follow Paul, or they follow some other God that they've imagined in their mind. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words about Jesus Christ, not about Paul. Paul's not Jesus. Leave that home or town and shake the dust off your feet. Matthew 10:14. So are you supposed to keep evangelizing people who will not listen to you? No. Jesus said in the message about the parable, really, the parable or the message about the dogs and the pearls before swine, that's the same message. Do not do that. They will not just not listen to you, they'll try to destroy you. And they can destroy you, because really the way Satan destroys you is not killing your body. That's not, Jesus says, don't worry about those who will destroy the body. Fear the one who will take your body and your soul and cast into hell. They're trying to make you fall into the pit of hell by hating them, by allowing the antagonism that this person has to cause you to be antagonistic back. And you basically have to keep your cool, which isn't always easy under fire. And you have to, if you realize you're on edge, meaning you could go the wrong way, you could sin, you could become hateful, got to cut them out completely and just say goodbye. And I've done that. And there's people on the channel who've been corresponding, and I was trying to communicate with them, and I thought we were having a dialogue, but it turned out it's just a monologue, and that's unacceptable in a human relationship where it's not electronic. I wouldn't, if somebody's just talking to me and never listens to anything I say, what would you think of that person? Say, please get out of my house. I don't have time for you, because you're not even social. You're an antisocial person. And so people who are antisocial monologists will antagonize you, and that's all they're intending to do. They are agents of Satan, and they don't know it. They think they're doing the right thing. They think they're from God. They think that Paul's from God. Paul teaches them to be evil and despicable towards people because he justifies what? He justifies lying to people. If the gospel spread more by my lie, why am I still called a sinner? Romans 3 verse 7. These people live by the lie. So they're going to deceive you and pretend that, I agree with you about Jesus. He's important, but Paul is even more important. And then they'll eventually try to bring you around that Paul's the only one who's important and Jesus is a different dispensation. And then you're forever lost, because now you don't even have a way back. You don't have these commands anymore. These commands, they'll say, are for a different dispensation, so you can't even use them. Anyway, but getting back, Matthew 10:14 is a parallel. Do not cast to the message. Do not cast your pearls before swine. You move on. You don't waste any more words or time on them. Just don't even worry about it. They physically heard your message. So if you've said what you had to say and they don't want to listen, that's just life. Just move on. Don't get hung up on it. If they refuse to engage reasonably and fairly on the message, that's their problem. You did what you were supposed to do. Don't get involved in prolonged discussions. They're not listening. They don't engage. And in other words, by the way, that puts a large obligation on you, the speaker, that you have to use every moment you have to give them exactly the message that person needs, whatever the words are from Christ that will answer their particular problem. And if you've done your job, you've given it to them, and then they don't want to listen. And I've had this repeatedly. I'll give them a verse. I'll tell them the sign of the Son of Man prevents Paul. This is the standard response. Again, on 80% of the commentary I have with Paul on the channel, where I respond and I say, but you know what? Paul can't have met Jesus Christ because of the sign of the Son of Man. Jesus said, I will not return to a wilderness place in the private to any person, and if whoever says that's me, it's not me, because when I return, every eye on earth will see me. And they'll respond, but what Paul said, he wasn't claiming it was the second coming. I said, exactly. It only will be the second coming when he comes back. He's not going to come back in a third. He's not going to have in between second coming to Paul and then a third coming at the end. It's one second coming, and that's why it's called the second coming. But if you have Paul in the mix, you've got three comings. Jesus Christ said that will never be me, so it's not Christ. And they will not respond. They will never acknowledge just the barest facts. That's what Jesus said. That's what Paul claims. He had an appearance of Jesus Christ just as if he had resurrected and he was in front of them. But they will not listen. Why? Because it's the most important proof that they're wrong. And the most important proof has to be rejected and not even talked about. I would appreciate it if they would even comment, but they never comment back. They never say you're right or you're wrong. They just they just move on to a different topic and say, but you're discounting Paul and all of his epistles, and you've cut out half the New Testament. They just have this. They come to you with the same argument they started with, but they did not listen to you because you gave them a refutation they cannot answer. So if they will not respond and engage with you, just leave them in their place. You gave them the message they had to hear. You cited them to Matthew 24, verses 5, and then 10 through 23. You've given it to them. They don't want to listen. They don't want to know that Christ said your favorite apostle is a liar, that he's a liar exactly. He was duped. He was duped on the road of Damascus. He's duped. They don't want to think he was, they think he's the most spiritual being on earth. They think he's superior to Jesus. So how can Paul be duped by a false Jesus? This is why it doesn't compute with them. But that's their problem. Let them simmer on the problem, but you don't get drawn into it, because you're just going to get angry and pissed off, frankly, when you realize they're not listening to you and they just completely don't engage, and they disengage, and they start monologuing with you, which is they don't listen anymore and they just want you to hear everything they have to say. That's not having a dialogue. That's not having a relationship with anyone. That's just being mean-spirited on their side. Don't get engaged. Just say, you know what? You're not listening to me. We're not having any communications anymore, so I'm going to cut it off. It was nice, dealing with you. Maybe you can't say that honestly, so say something nicer, though. Thank you for the time that you spent on my channel, and, but right from now on, I'm not going to communicate with you anymore. And I've done that. I've cut people off. They want to keep communicating to me. I've told them I'm going to delete all your comments because I don't want your spamming my channel. You don't listen to any of my videos, so you're gone. As far as I'm concerned, you did not engage with the channel. So now what does Jesus warns that they might destroy you. He says, if you do continue with them, they will try to destroy God's message as well as turn and tear you to pieces. Wow. So let's see. Well, it can indeed mean killing you, but I don't think that's what Jesus is telling you to be worried about, a death threat or something like that. And I've gotten that too, by the way. But, if I die, I die. That's just it. It's like, what can we do? We're all going to die. But it more likely means that Jesus is saying they will lead you into dangerous sins such as hatred of a brother or sister in Christ. So if you hate someone, you have become a murderer. What did John say? And there's no eternal life in a murderer. So you must not engage in hate. Now, they're very hateful towards you. Now, the other problem is you want to try to dial down their hatred so that they don't engage in sin. It's sending them to hell. But even like I said, even when they claim they're praying for you, I'm praying for you, they're really saying I'm better than you, and therefore I'm praying for you because I know you're lost and you're whatever. But if they really were sympathetic, you can say they could have said something like, is there any way I can pray for you that you think that or is there anything I don't understand that you think I need to hear? Really, that's what I need to do, sometimes too, is just keep trying to dialogue with them. But I do try, and many times or most of the times, well, I've only cut off a couple people so far on this channel, but I've had to do it in the past. And I'm going to share with you a couple of letters. When I used to only run a website, I didn't really pay much attention to the YouTube channel until just a couple of months ago. Okay, so Jesus said in Matthew 5:22. Yeah, so here's what you don't want to get. Jesus is saying, you can be destroyed. How can you be destroyed? By falling into this pit of 5:22. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister, and I'm going to presume when these people say they're followers of Christ, that they're a brother or sister in the sense that I have to acknowledge them when they claim they're a follower of Christ, that they're Christian. That doesn't mean they're saved. They think that means they're saved. I don't think it means they're saved. It means they follow Christ, or they believe they're following Christ, which is great. Great, because then you can work with them because they're halfway there. They just got to acknowledge that they need to take Paul out of their mind and follow Christ, because you've got a big impediment underneath your feet tripping you up every day called Paul. Anyway, but I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister, so don't get angry with a brother or sister, will be subject to judgment, meaning that's not a good thing. Again, Anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, which is meaning you're stupid, empty head, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Yeah, so a lot of people write me and they go, you're an idiot. You don't listen. You don't understand anything. You don't know the Bible. All kinds of stuff. Which, I mean, it's designed to insult and antagonize and make you get angry. It is not designed to convince you. It's designed to kind of shepherd you. If you don't go my way, I'm going to ridicule you. Okay, and it will only lead you to anger. It's just that's what they want. They want you to get angry because really, even though they don't maybe intentionally do this, but they're serving Satan. And what does Satan want you to do? Want you to get angry and hateful, because then what will happen to me? I'm going to go to hell, because Jesus told me I will go to hell if I fall into hatred. If you call someone fool, like I would like to call some of these people fool when I get angry, you will be in the danger of hell. Okay. Apostle John likewise said, anyone who hates a brother or sister is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life residing in him. So hatred is a strong feeling, like you have an ill will towards someone. Okay, so we could talk about what is the meaning of hatred. And but I think it's more than just a dislike, or you find them unpleasant, or maybe you don't even understand what they're saying, or you don't respect how they live or what they do for a living, or all kinds of things. You can dislike someone, but a hatred means I hope something bad happens to that person. I hope that person gets hit by a truck. I hope that person, drops dead tomorrow. Those kind of wishes and dreams and thoughts that get into your head, whatever it is, or hatred is an irrational thought, and so it's hard to actually tell you what you might think it is. But whatever it is, it's a desire for ill will, I would say, is the best way to put it, for another person. You don't wish them good, you really wish them harm. And even when you say I'm praying for you, you don't really mean it. You mean I wish you go to hell, because you're going to hell. And so anyway, we need to love people. We need to not be drawn into hatred. And sometimes even though you want to continue to try to repent from your feelings, Jesus has told you, don't even get close enough, that you'll end up falling into the pit of hell by hating that person. Cut it off totally. All right, I'm going to share with you now a couple of letters, because I just want you to see the instincts I've had to use in the past. And at first you're not sure you're right, and then the person completely reveals their hidden side by the time you deal with this whole thing where you cut them off. Sometimes they want to keep dialoguing, and I have an interesting episode where that happens. So I just want to show you what underneath. Sometimes you just got to trust your gut and just say, I'm cutting it off, and then you'll find out what they're really all about. Because that's when they pull they take the mittens off. Now they show you who they really were all along, and you spotted it and you stopped it before it went too far. Okay, so I used to be mostly using emails and communicating with people about my web articles and all that. And now, after I got sick, I lost the website while I was ill. Someone stole the name, but thankfully somebody saved the website. Thank you. I won't mention his name, but somebody saved the website. And so at least I have the website. I can't work on it or edit it anymore, but it's still out there, and thank goodness. So that's the www.jesuswordsonly.com/GitHub, GITHUB.io. Anyway, so I would correspond with people. And so I said this to this person, I love you, dear brother in Christ. I must be concerned for brother when he begins using the word raka, empty head, or synonym, because my Lord tells me he is in danger of judgment. So when someone writes me that I am incorrect and got something backwards, but adds the word ASS, such as ASS backwards, then I must conclude my brother is in danger of the judgment. Or instead of saying I supposedly misunderstood something, instead he says I supposedly completely misunderstood something. There are many ways to say raka, as you know. So in dialogue, I might say somebody completely misunderstood something, but if I'm just observing that and I'm not talking directly to the person, that's a fair thing. You can tell somebody didn't understand something completely, right? But if you say that to someone's face, you can antagonize that person, and you need to not do that face-to-face in dialoguing. This topic matter then is not spiritually productive for my brother. My brother may have truly beneficial truths to share, but he is filled with hatred and antagonism, and I am somehow feeding it. I must follow Yeshua's command with even a brother who began worthy to shake the dust off my feet and move on. I've had many opponents write, and I learned a lot from many. See how carefully I studied your points in the name of Jesus. I seek to grow, but a handful use words that are needlessly antagonistic. Once they begin changing their tune, I always exit the dialogue. This becomes dangerous to me spiritually to continue, as Jesus also says, if you hate a brother or sister, then you are at risk of hell, fire. Hence, for both our good, I think we have shared enough, and we spiritually are commanded to move on. And see, that's the thing. It's actually the other person is falling into being hateful towards you, and then you want to be hateful to them, and so really the dialogue is going in the wrong direction, and you're not you're both potentially cooperating in creating mutual anger and hostility, and that's when you just need to just say, hey, Jesus gave me a command, I got to back off, and pray for them, and truly pray for them, not mean it in any bad way. So I pray Yahweh richly bless you. Be well, Doug. And then he responded, I was exiting because he was allegedly scoring good points, and I supposedly did not want to hear them. So I responded. So he's just doing it. He's just continuing the same old thing, antagonist him. I'm winning, you're losing, therefore you're just a coward, you're just wandering away, blah, 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 blah. So I wrote him back. I said, I'm glad you don't think you've called me Rocco or used a synonym. However, I am concerned for your spirit that you do not sin. But if we continue, I feel you may not sense what I sense. A strong antagonism is building in you. Now, wait till you're going to hear his third response. So that's when you're going to know. This is what I mean is my instinct was right here. I could have been wrong, but I wasn't, that he was going in this wrong direction. Okay, I sense a strong antagonism is building in you and may lead you to sin, which in turn can lead me to sin in response. Better to cut it off before it leads to a serious sin by either one of us. When civility is lost in dialogue, Yeshua warns there is a danger of judgment, and thus we need to flee from such relationships that cause it. And this is true in life. I mean, this doesn't have to be talking to someone about Jesus or witnessing or anything like that. You could have the same situation in a business relationship, or you can have the same situation really sometimes in your marriage. You need to kind of get that, because you're married, you can't just walk out the door. You need to work your problems out by dialoguing and toning down the problem and not aggravating it. Also, I feel you're not writing to listen to anything I have to say. You never take it at all seriously. You wish me to only listen to you. So this is what I've sensed. If there's a monologue going on, got to get out of that situation. I've shown you respect and studied your emails and responded carefully, but the responses I get from you are not what I can respect. Sorry. So Yeshua gives me a stern command to shake the dust off my feet and move on, and that command involved a person who initially appeared worthy. So I wish you well, and I'm glad we cut this off before you went too far and I became angry in return with you. Blessings of Yahweh, Doug. And here's the last email, is a ranting, crazy email. You're claiming, and in the same email, he's claiming he has no animosity. Here's what I wrote back. And so I'm not going to read you his ranting email, because I'm going to quote his ranting email back at him and show this is what I meant. Listen to what you're saying. This is my response. And then I'm quoting him. So you're going to hear what he wrote in nasty terms. Hi R, do you really read what you are saying? Quote, I had to see what in the world you are saying to affect these people. And I wrote back, is that a sober mind? Next quote from him. From what I can see, the biggest fishbone is stuck in your throat. And I wrote back, R, is that how you talk to a person you love? Next he says, quote, stop right here and think. R, capitals are used here like yelling. Do you need to do that? The best example is because your ego is too big to admit you are in error regarding Paul. And then I respond, so you don't reason with me but attack my character. Even when I told you what I was concerned about was inflammatory words, there it is. I supposedly don't have common sense to hear you because I allegedly have a big ego. If this last letter you sent me does not prove what I said, I don't know what to tell you. To have a dialogue requires civility, respect, and loving concern. My perception, whether right or wrong, is you evince venom, hatred, and hostility. Thus your words are there for you to examine your own heart. I cannot see what is in there. Yeshua does not tell me I have to know what is in your heart. He says I am obeying him by shaking the dust off my feet of a relationship with someone who I at first respected as worthy, but who later demonstrated that he will not listen. In obedience to Messiah, I must move on. I again wish you all the best. Blessings of Yah, Doug. Okay. Now, finally, actually, I forgot. There was a fourth letter. I didn't remember this is here. So he wrote me another time. Finally, Mr. R crossed all lines and rejected trying to be polite and then blatantly insults me. Hi, R. I have no choice but to officially block you now. I do pray for my brother. Raka has many forms. You even admit not wishing to be polite. You write, you almost sound like a temperamental girl instead of a litigation lawyer. I am praying for you, and I did mean it there. I wasn't trying to insult him. Blessings of Yah, and this is my final email. Okay, so what do I... Oh, I'm going to have to stop this because I can't get the screen to go lower, so we'll have one more slide. All right, so in the article I wrote online about this, and by the way, if you wanted to search it on the Jesus Words Only, oh, by the way, it was not JesusWordsOnly.com, it was JesusWordsOnly.github, GITHUB.io, so it's get rid of the com and just add github.io. Anyway, so this is what I wrote years ago back on the website. My final comment was to the website readers. When you have a confrontation like this, you are to act civil and polite to one another. This is true even in court. Also, we are not Jesus where we can exercise powers of condemnation and judgment. In the parable of the wheat and tares, Jesus says to leave the judgment to the angels. Exit the conversation before you become hostile and condemnatory. So that is still my advice, and I think that's Jesus' implicit command is to spare yourself from falling into sin of hatred, sin of anger, and then retaliation and all kinds of things. And I don't think it's incorrect to politely withdraw, meaning in this situation, I even responded 2 or 3 more times to try to actually reach out to him and realize that, while we were having a dialogue about some other issue, this problem came up where it was hostility and anger, and we were not any longer dialoguing. He was just yelling and screaming, and I was trying to nicely get him, maybe had he said, you know what, you're right. Frankly, I thought if I said all these things that maybe he would actually say, you know what, you're right, I repent. I'd be willing to start over with you. Is that okay? You know what? What would I be supposed to do? I would say okay, and I would give the person another chance. But if I don't hear that, it's going to end exactly where it ended, where he's just getting worse and worse and worse. And so it just really, but I still think it's right to sometimes give a person 1 or 2 more chances. So if you're civil enough to them and try to reach out to them so they can understand this is a command that it's for both of our mutual benefit to withdraw from this bad dialogue. And then if you won't listen, you just got to stop communicating at all completely. I've really gotten to the point where I just figure if I tell the person why I'm doing it, you're not communicating to me, you're not watching, for example, on our channel. If you don't look at the video and you're just commenting, you're spamming. You shouldn't use the channel for that purpose anyway. That's wrong. That's unethical. If you have watched the video, then you can comment on the video. But if you then use it still for spamming, which is, a 20-page letter on your doctrines that have nothing to do with the video, that's a misuse as well. I mean, I could just go through all the different ways you can misuse things. And then some people actually spam me by sending the same message as the identical message on 6 different videos, same words. What do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to delete it because you're not listening and you're just simply monologuing. So, there's a little bit of that going on right now. And I have to admit, I'm new to YouTubing. That was not what I used to do. I used to do web page articles all the time. And now I'm doing YouTubing more exclusively, really. I don't have a website anymore. It's an archive is what that is. So anyway, I'm enjoying it, though. I think it's better. I think engaging with people and dialoguing is more fun for me. And it's a lot easier than trying to write out articles and edit them. And I think people are more... they can hear the what you mean by things better when you can actually say it and it's not just print on a piece of paper. Anyway, I hope this was helpful and you got the message of Jesus Christ in his message about do not throw your pearls before swine, do not throw your pearls before dogs, because they're going to bite and chew and destroy it, and they're going to hurt you in the end. And I think he meant not physically but spiritually, and that's what you need to protect. And Jesus wants you to protect that part of yourself, and the spiritual part of you. So don't let yourself get drawn into hateful dialogues with people, and then that goes for not just Facebook or blogging or just electronic things. It's your life, your daily life. You have to just, let's say mom and dad. I'm just going to now digress. If your mom and dad seem to be like this and they're not listening to you and whatever, then just basically in a very polite way, just be polite for a while and don't engage in any conversations that will lead to hateful conversations and lead to a lot of angry animosity. Talk about things that are neutral and create a pattern where you can dialogue once again with your own family, and they will be friendly and have had productive conversations with you about things that are unrelated to triggers. Let's call them triggers. Everybody has triggers, and you can trigger your parents if you wanted to. Don't do that anymore, and don't press the buttons. And you'll say, well, what if it's about my message of Christ? Well, you want to know something? Jesus included the message of Christ has to be withdrawn from certain situations once they lead to this kind of problem. You see? And that's another important thing, is like, it's not, you don't just preach Christ in order to continue antagonism and hatred. No. That is actually, you're not following Christ's message. Once you hear they're not listening to you, you stop. You stop. And then pray for them and don't bring it up. Let them come back to you one day and say, you talked to me about Christ once before. I'm a little curious now. Something happened in my life that I want to share with you, my son or my daughter. Now I'm open to it, okay? Or I want to talk to you what you think about something. And so your parent doesn't forget where you were spiritually 2 months ago, even though you haven't said a darn thing about it. So you don't have to say a word. Sometimes not saying a word will prove what to your parent? That they'll know the parable of the pearls before swine, and maybe they'll realize, or the dogs giving to dogs, they'll maybe realize you've withdrawn to be able to protect yourself spiritually, and also them from getting into a further hatred thing. And maybe they'll actually appreciate that you made a mature, good decision on to stop this discussion, even if it's about the Bible, to prevent further harm to the relationship, which is of love that a father, mother, child should have. Now, that said, I want to say this. Jesus is quoted in Luke saying something that I think was a mistranslation, that, you have to hate your mother and father or whatever. Matthew has the right translation, which is you have to love God more than your mother and father and so on. But see, that's actually exactly what you're doing, even if you withdraw from antagonistic conversations with mom and dad. Maybe mom and dad want to get into an antagonistic conversation with you, and you have to pull back and say, you know what, this is not being productive. I think we're just, antagonizing one another. So I'd rather not talk too much more about whatever it is that was leading to hateful, venomous kind of conversations. So you have to show some maturity that they'll appreciate later, maybe sometimes, that you don't talk about stuff when it's not necessary to do that. And another thing I just want to say, not everybody has to get off the Paul train. A lot of people have no doctrinal theology at all. And just telling them about Christ and what Jesus said about this or that and the other thing, they just eat it up. They love it because they're not thinking about Paul versus Jesus at all. They're just open to either one. But if you give them Christ, then you're feeding them what they need to really hear. So you don't need to actually dispel Paul in that person's life at all. You just talk to them about Christ, and you are healing them spiritually by giving them the words of life. And you don't need to remove the words of death from Paul or any other evil in their lives. It's just giving them the words of Christ, and you're giving them the words of life. All right. Anyway, I hope that helped everybody, and God bless. Take care. Ciao.